Alright, so you've seen the title to this video. What do I mean by bad sportsmanship? Well, I'll try to keep this video short, but I mean they are sore losers when it comes to Trump. I'm talking about Republicans, of course. I think you know what I'm talking about too, probably already. Even before the 2020 election took place, Trump was already whining about the election being rigged. Then the big day came and went, and he was such a sore loser that it ultimately culminated in the storming of the U.S. Capitol building by his crazed lunatic cult of Proud Boys and sycophants for the Orange Menace. The question is, did it have to be this way? Was the election rigged? My answer? Of course not. Trump's so-called legal team had every opportunity to provide evidence of the fraud they were alleging, and they failed miserably. What did we get instead? Rudy Giuliani farting a couple of times, awkwardly sweating hair dye, and holding a bizarre press conference at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping facility, I guess you might call it. Then there's Sidney Powell, who, in her own awkward way, promised us the election was stolen by Hugo Chavez's ghost in coordination with Joe Biden, the Clinton Foundation, Antifa, yes, she actually said that, Antifa, George Soros, and ultimately even the Department of Justice's Bill Barr, who somehow found himself in the mix of Trump's accusatory lotto. So, yeah, I was there. I witnessed all of this happening. No matter what you want to do now, you cannot deny that these people actually existed and said these things. It was all a bizarre spectacle, almost too bizarre to be believed, but there it was right before our very eyes. Over 60 court cases, and they couldn't provide even a single shred of evidence of significant election or voter fraud. In fact, it was Trump himself who risked legal trouble when he urged his supporters to try voting twice. I believe he did that in Minnesota at one point, and possibly even in more states than that. I think he even said that as sort of a general proclamation at one point. Still, this was a guy who insisted he won despite all the evidence otherwise, and whose bad sportsmanship about losing made him that much bigger of a monumental loser. When you lose at something like baseball, you don't stay on the diamond or the field until someone declares your team actually won. You take your loss like a proverbial man, you respect it, and hopefully don't have a festering resentment about it. You also don't have to make up allegations that the other team cheated, which is something Trump actually did before the game. That is, the election in this case, before that even took place. He baselessly claimed that mail-in voting was guaranteed to be fraudulent, and he even had the Postmaster General slow down the mail intentionally. And I'm not even worried about, being accused of being libelous by saying that. Because, again, it was right there in front of everybody's eyes. There were things that Louis DeJoy did that would no doubt slow down the mail service. So it's not a fake claim on my part. All right, I was right there. I even know somebody who works in the post office who told me that yes, their mail was slowing down because of his decisions. Anyway, Trump knew it was false. How do we know that? He simultaneously, occasionally urged people to vote by mail, often in the same speech where he told people that the mail-in voting was rigged. So he was speaking out of both sides of his mouth, so to speak, mixing lies in with the truth and obviously being a source of confusion. In the grand scheme of things, he was projecting his own capacity for cheating outward onto the opposing team, as we found it particularly well when the Georgia phone call was revealed, wherein Trump attempted to bribe officials into finding 11,780 vote. votes, sorry. And here's the thing. Trump could have won legitimately easily had he been more competent with COVID 19, and frankly, had he been less divisive of a figure overall. However, his insistence was to be against science while pouring salt on every wound, gasoline on every fire, and exaggerating the differences between so called red states and blue states. He claimed Obama was a secret Muslim and that Democrats, you know, do everything wrong that happens in the country. And of course, he has followers in QAnon who apparently believe that all the Democrats eat aborted fetuses for dinner, or whatever Marjorie Taylor Greene actually thinks, and all the Marjorie Taylor Greenoids out there. And had Trump been less divisive, less racist, less this, less that, he could have been someone even I would have supported, even if only a little bit in some instances. But he was just a reprehensible, repulsive person through and through, for the most part. Even in those rare moments where he did something that was maybe good, he kind of tarnished those by doing even those things for the wrong reasons. When George Floyd protests happened, there's an example. When those happened, Trump could have tried to address the concerns that Black Lives Matter activists raised, rather than dismissing the entire movement and organization. He could have still professed love of law enforcement while saying, but here are some much needed reforms that I support which will better hold police accountable. See, it's not really an either or thing. That's the funny thing about it. Like, you don't necessarily have to hate police to push for police reform. Hell, he could have also refrained from constantly verbally attacking the squad on Twitter, just as he didn't have to attack the Central Park Five. And to show just what a bad sport Trump was, he never apologized for his terrible words against the Central Park Five, or acknowledged that they were fully exonerated by DNA evidence. The evidence exonerated those 5 people, accused of that terrible crime. But Trump was apparently too good for that or something. However he would frame it in his own mind. So why does Donald Trump reject things like science, evidence, and fairness? Well, it's because, yes, he is a lousy sport. Somewhere in his brain, he likely actually knows that, and in order to be a good sport, he knows you must accept that you can sometimes lose. Being a man-child, however, that's not something he can respect. He has to be a winner at all times, and all eyes are to be on him. If he can't learn, that lesson, then he's not a good leader. And if he can't earn respect, he knows that he can earn fear. He was and is a megalomaniac who gets off on social division and conflict. He is petty and cruel, and he lies at nearly every opportunity, but repeats his lies so often that even he ends up thinking they're true. Everything he says just about is either self-aggrandizing, bitter, or both, and he is the biggest crybaby snowflake the world could ever possibly expect to see. Unfortunately, Republicans seem to be borrowing from his playbook right now, and they're more than ready to claim every election they don't win was rigged. They feel that if there isn't another Trump disaster, maybe they can take his place and cash in on his style of chaos more for themselves. None of this is to say Democrats couldn't get in on this game either. Or even that Democrats couldn't, do some cheating in elections or otherwise. But the evidence so far suggests they're a little less likely to do so. Also, Trump was, in many ways, sort of a special case. He took things further because he's such an incredibly sore loser. However, if you look at plenty of dictatorships throughout history, you'll see a little glint of Trumpism in their eyes. They haven't all ruined the song YMCA, though. That is something that's quite unique to Trump. And I'll leave it at that. I know this video will win plenty of hatred from many Trump humpers out there, and I assure you that I do not care. You can, take that hatred and just let it bubble up inside as like a fountain of resentment that will ooze out all over the place. And yeah, that's about all I have to say. Have a good day.